Hello, it's Sherry Clergis live from Vancouver with At 45 Magazine for When Life Changes. And today we're talking about emotions. And I'm so excited to be able to dive deep into this subject with a marvelous subject expert. We're talking today with Janyse Hrynkow, who is the creator of AHA Communications, better known as AHA Solutions. And she has over 40 years in the field of human wellness and motivation. She's not only a seasoned psychotherapist, a corporate and community speaker, she's a clinical supervisor for therapists, a counseling psychology educator, a critical incident responder, a writer, soon to be an author, and she finds time to paint. As a new thought leader, she loves what she studies and learns, and she's been a catalyst for change in many households and corporations. Witnessing mastery has given her purpose and meaning, and this woman keeps on going even at 72. Welcome, Janyse.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for having me here. It's wonderful, and I'm looking forward to today.
Oh, me too. So we all deal with emotions, and some of us have actually not learned how to deal with emotions, and it seems to cause us problems afterwards. So I'm really excited to hear a little bit more about how to harness the power of emotions with you today, Janice.
hmm And I like the way you said that, harness the power of emotions, because even the whole idea of using the word harness indicates that we need to control them, right? When we really need to have mastery over our emotions. So there's feelings. When we have feelings, that's that internal physiological um, state that we're in, depending on the experience that we are engaged in. And then how we look at that experience, how we interpret that experience, says a lot about what we're thinking about that experience. And in thinking about the experience, then we create a feeling. Now, others talk to us about emotions. So, emotions are all those names we give feelings to, really. And there's many, many in the world. So, which are the right emotions to have? Feelings are created by us. So, as much as we can create terror in our own body, we can also create peace in our own body. The brain operates in the same way. If I was to ask you to stand up at a wedding and say something about the bride and you had never practiced it, but you always wanted to be a speaker, you might be delighted just at the thought of getting all that attention. So you'd stand up and you're not prepared, but you know what to say. Your heart will still flutter. Your hands could still sweat, right? So what you tell yourself, what you're telling your brain tells your body that it's exciting. It's what you've always waited for. And yet, at the same time, if I was to ask someone else to stand up and say something about the bride and they weren't prepared, they could be devastated simply by what they're telling themselves, right? Their hands will perspire, their heart will beat, and they'll think this is the worst thing in the world. They'll have anxiety, coming through the roof. So the body responds to what the brain says, and the brain responds to what you're telling yourself. So, how we talk to ourselves is very important. And that's part of the treatment for anxiety. How do you talk to yourself? Right? And we all need to know how to self regulate our emotions.
That is the first time that somebody has ever described it to me in that way, and it really hit home because it's really true that both people would be feeling the same thing, but describing it as a different feeling or emotion.
Mm-hmm. And the most beautiful thing is we create our feelings, and that means we're really alive. So we need to have all of those emotions, but it's what we do with them that matters. So we can have any kind of feeling and we can be telling ourselves all sorts of things, but then how do we act? So cognitive therapy talks about us thinking. We have an event, and then we think something about it, and then it creates a feeling, and then that feeling takes us to a certain behavior. So that's why in therapy we talk about reframing those thoughts, putting them into reality, making them a little bit more in line with what's happening, and having more compassion for ourselves so that we learn to accept our feelings and acknowledge them, that they're very important. But then we have to decide, what are we going to do with them? And so, for instance, the other day, my youngest son took me out for a walk, and he told me that with all this pandemic, him and his girlfriend are thinking about maybe moving away, maybe moving to Prague. And I had had a wonderful day, and then all of a sudden the thought came up, ooh, loss, right? Ooh, my heart went like this. My son is moving far away, and ooh, that would be loss. And then I thought, isn't that funny? Loss came up right away because I don't want to lose my son. But at the same time, my thought was, what a wonderful thing to not give up in the world. There's so much to see. And so why don't you go for it? Move away. And we started talking about me coming to Prague and learning Italian and learning Czech and learning all these different things and making it exciting. So changing the way we look at things opens us up to a new way of responding once we accept the feeling.
Well, so if we went back to the first example you gave about, the person at the wedding. So, one person is looking at it as a positive experience, and the other person is looking at it in a negative mode. Do you think then that that person could be talking to themselves and change it into a positive?
We do that all the time, and of course we can. So what people get confused with is, for instance, if you're feeling really depressed, you can't just say, oh, I'm really happy, and change that. But what you can do is put it into something that is more congruent, and then you can take an action to help that, right? So the person standing up could say, whoo, I'm really scared. And you'll see people do this all the time. They'll stand up and they'll say, gee, I didn't have anything prepared. And of course, the audience really relates to that because they understand what that might be like, especially if they're nervous, right? So they could have a lot of empathy for that person. So we begin by saying, gee, I'm not prepared at all. I don't even know what to say. Let me think about it. Well, this gal has been my friend for my whole life. And then it's coming from the heart, isn't it? And it's not coming from a practice speech, but it's just coming from the heart saying what you really think about that person. So the focus needs to go on that bride, not on the feeling inside. That's why when you're learning to become a public speaker, I always say, and I ended up teaching that course in night school for a long time, is talk about what you love. Because when you talk about what you love, it comes from the heart. Because you can always learn more about what you love. But if you're trying to memorize and practice a speech and sort of look so good at doing it, chances are you might forget because you're a little bit excited or fearful, right? And then there's all kinds of emotions, right? I love Alfred Adler. So he talks about movement, moving towards someone, moving away. So there's emotions that validate you, emotions that make you feel good about yourself, like happiness and love and joy and compassion, all of those feelings. And they move you towards something so that you can appreciate and acknowledge. And then there's emotions that compel you, right, to protect yourself. And those are the emotions like fear, right? Or anger, that we want to protect ourselves. Anger is, you haven't responded to me in the way I need you to, so I want to remove that obstacle from my way. And other emotions like terror or anxiety, we call fear too. So there's anxiety from when we were children even, and it's stored somewhere in our cells. And then there's the anxiety of everyday living in the city. Everything is about hurry. Am I doing everything well? So those kinds of thoughts that we have, oh, is something going to happen? Did I do this right? Did I finish this? I'm in a hurry all the time. So we need to learn how to calm ourselves. We need to learn how to create the peace inside. And that is through our own self-regulation. And of course, that's why we teach new things like emotional freedom techniques, where you tap, because emotion is attached to a memory. Every memory you have has an emotion, and you can change that emotion by reframing and rewriting that memory and then working through, right?
That tapping is an amazing technique. A counselor that I worked with in the past taught me that technique. Do you want to just tell people a little bit about it?
Well, I can tell you a little bit about it, but it's really a whole lot about it.
I know it's a whole subject in itself.
It's a whole subject. You can have, but basically, when you tap on a certain acupressure point, it sends out sort of an electrical signal out to a certain part of an organ or a body part, and it clears the circuitry, or it clears the blockage. So there's a sequential plan, a plan that you learn to release the emotion, and you learn to calm yourself, because you have to measure it before and you have to measure yourself afterwards. And it really is done with the whole idea of I deeply and completely love myself, even though I still have a little bit of anxiety, right?
Yeah.
That are not perfectly erased from all of those emotions. They make us human, and we need to feel. That's why people need to really, really express themselves. If you don't want to be depressed, express yourself. Whether you sing or you dance or you write poetry, but you need to move. We need to move, and we don't move because we're caused to move. We move towards goals, right?
So are there some emotions that are more important than others or more positive? Should we be paying more attention to positive emotions? Like there's so
There's all kinds of emotions, but the your personality, you form your personality, right? You build your character based on what you're thinking and how you're operating in the world. So whatever you practiced, you get good at. So if you practice thinking sad thoughts and negative thoughts, you can go deeper and deeper into depression, right? So that's why you have to use your mind. You have to use the way you think. Think about the way you think, and think about the way you're feeling. And we have to work sort of holistically and put them all together, right? So you'll see a lot of people get angry. So what is anger about, right? Anger is out, there's an obstacle in my way. I didn't get what I want, even though we're supposed to meet our own needs. You didn't give me what I want, and I want to remove you out of the way. right? So when people are angry, some people create distance and some people walk through the world expecting, right? I'm entitled for me to get my own way. When really, there are other ways to handle that anger. And there are many, many ways in therapy we look at that anger. I get people to write it all out, to talk about it. I don't say punch a pillow because I tried that once and I hurt my wrist, right? So, and underneath that emotion, underneath the emotion of anger is usually some sadness, right? So, and culturally speaking, people can define certain emotions in different ways. I mean, think of all the ways we can feel sadness. I just finished watching The Handmaiden's Tale, and at the end, I cried so hard. Was I sad? I was sad. Yeah, I was sad, but I was so glad to see such courage and so many women come together to help the future generation and remove the children. So I was compassionately sad, right? Because of what happened in the movie. So it's powerful. Emotions take a lot of energy.
And so then why is it so important that we, keep in touch with our emotions? Is it because it's creating that like a new direction to go to, or it's dissipating a negative a negativity in our life? Like,
Well, maybe both. People don't like to feel badly. They don't like to feel the negative emotions. But the more you think about them and the more you feel them, the deeper you can go. So that, I heard, I can't remember where I heard this, that isolation, uh, the brain atrophies in isolation and it bleeds despair. I heard that line and I went, that is so true. Right? We really need to have positive energy coming into us and sharing with the rest of the world. And how do we get that energy? Right? We don't get that energy when we're closed off from people because we're social beings who really need to connect. So even in this pandemic, we need to connect with people. We're doing it online, but my brain's energy, can it share that energy with your brain? Not quite, right? So it's wonderful to get outside and to even say hello to people passing by and wave to them, because that connection is really, really important, right?
absolutely. And especially now in this pandemic, I think so many people are feeling it. In fact, I read somewhere, again, I'm not exactly sure where, but that there are more people being prescribed antidepressants, over the last short while than there's been ever. So it really is a big problem.
Mm-hmm. It is, and the people who want the medications, they still need a wellness plan. The doctors still need to say to them, which the doctors don't say enough, that even though you're taking anti-anxiety medication, you still need a wellness plan. So that means you can still be in therapy and you can still learn how to do high self-care, how to get a good sleep, how to have protein in the morning, how to have exercise, what to do, how to change your thinking so that you can feel something else. So how to take charge of your life. Because the people who are having the hardest time in the pandemic didn't have very good coping skills before.
Mm.
How much I work and have told my clients self-care is extremely important. You need to treat yourself. You know how they used to say, oh, she's a high maintenance woman? You want to be a high maintenance woman. You do. You want to make sure you're well rested, that you're eating well, that you're moving, that you're dancing, that you're singing, that you're listening to music, that you're meditating and you're relaxing. Because the world there, if all you have to do is listen to the news, and it's scary, it feels scary, but you can't do anything about it except take care of yourself and stay home, right?
Well, there you heard it, ladies. Be a high maintenance woman. We all need permission to do
Yes,
that.
I'm proud of it, you know. And I'll tell you that whether you want a woman or a man, you want a high maintenance partner too. Right? Because
So,
that means that you care enough about yourself to treat yourself well, and not live in that despair or that dread, because it hurts, right?
yeah. Well, I think too, it goes to that whole life wheel. Um, Often I think when you're depressed or suffering from anxiety, it's because one of those parts of your life wheel are flat, right? And
Mm-hmm,
it's
mm-hmm,
not
mm-hmm,
working well. So
mm-hmm.
so how can harnessing an emotion help us live a happier and more fulfilled life? Like if we're taking steps to harness those
Oh, well,
emotions.
okay, so let's change the word harness. That's the first thing we want to do. So whatever you're feeling, you feel it. Then you ask yourself, what's going on inside me? What am I thinking? You need to explore your thoughts for a little bit. And then you need to ask, remember, we get a lot of negative thoughts coming to us throughout the day. We didn't make them all up, right? Then you need to ask yourself, is this true? Because one negative thought can lead to another one, can lead to another one, and then you can just spiral out of control for yourself. And we need to look at the purpose of the emotion. What is the purpose of the emotion that you are feeling? Is it moving you forward? So I always say to my clients, you ask yourself, is this serving me? Is this serving me right now? Because if it isn't serving me, then what can I do? What action can I take? And that's why anxiety doesn't like action, right? So we want to
Mm.
change action. We want to have action. So as soon as you get up in the morning, instead of lying in, or I should say, if you're lying in bed and you wake up, instead of dwelling on the thoughts that are scaring you, you just get up right away. That's a behavioral action. And you put yourself in the shower. Or if you have lots of anxiety, you say, I'm going to go have my shower and then I'm going to have breakfast. And immediately anxiety will drop. Immediately you'll feel a little bit better because the structure sort of comforts you. You know what to do. So, those thoughts that you have when you're a little bit worried, you go, I just don't know what to do. I just don't know what to do. I've changed it and it really helped me get rid of angst. I say, I know what to do and I do it. I know what to do and I do it. And I really do think your whole body hears that and it moves you into operation. So after you ask yourself, is this true? Is this serving me? And what can I do? Right? Then you decide what to do and you accept. So the reframing is something like, although I don't feel so good today, I'm going to take care of myself and I'm going to sit down, I'm going to have a cup of tea, and I'm going to write down a list of the things that I'd like to do. And already you've put yourself into action. And
And
sorry.
and it feels positive just by the very fact that you've done something. It makes you feel more positive.
We like to feel we're in charge. We like to feel that if there's going to be change, we create it. We don't like it when someone else wants to change us. And of course, we know, we can't change another person. The sooner we learn that, the happier we're going to be. But we can change how we think. And so there's a huge story to be the change. You are the change because we are made out of molecules, right? We change every year. We develop our character. We decide how we're going to look at life. And if it's not working for you, then how can you look at it a different way? So you can always change your perception. And choice is the biggest, most wonderful thing that we have, right? And so, you know, Viktor Frankl talked about that um, in his book, you know. Life is Beautiful is a wonderful movie to watch. Do you remember the movie Life is Beautiful?
Yes.
Yeah, and that father helped that child learn how to get through a horrible situation just by using encouragement. So encouragement is a very, very powerful tool, right? Because you can encourage your children before they do things, while they're doing things. Even if they don't do things well, you can still encourage them. And when they finish,
And
right?
we can give that encouragement to ourselves too. Like I think often we're not kind enough to ourselves.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah. And that's important. So self-compassion is, now you're hearing people talk about self-compassion. You know, that requires you to have, you have empathy, right? You know how it feels when somebody is sad out there or somebody is having a difficult time. You can put your um, feet in their moccasins, so to speak. Adler talked about that. You can feel with the heart of the other because you've had experiences in life that were sad like that. Maybe not exactly, but most people know from the time we're little, if you're happy and you know it, clap your hands. If you're sad, this is, you know, this has happened to you. This is called sad. This is angry. This is, you know, you're angry, time out. I remember my 4-year-old little grandson, his father used to give him time out, you know, if he got angry. And I remember my 4-year-old grandson coming over, and I thought he was so smart. He had insight at 4. He said, if anybody needs a time out here, it's dad. So he could see at 4, right? He can understand. So we all have had experiences in life that have made us feel good, made us feel bad, made us feel shame, made us feel all kinds of different emotions, what we call emotions, right? So we want to move from a felt minus to a felt plus.
Yeah, and I can really understand that because in my mind before we were talking, I was thinking like there's negative emotions and those are bad, and positive emotions and those are good. But what I hear you saying is even negative emotions, we can reframe them to become positive. Is that
Yes,
correct?
of course. And also remember, just because I'm kind and caring doesn't mean you're going to treat me kind and caring. So I have to learn how to handle difficult people in the world who aren't treating me like I would love them to be treating me. And how do we do that? So that's why in one of the articles I wrote for you before, that we have to come from a place where we didn't really want to go through this difficult experience. But sometimes we need to say thank you to that person who made it really difficult for us, because it forced us to stand up for ourselves, or it forced us to speak up to a situation. Sometimes I have to say to my clients, you know that in Canada, we have a law and it says you can speak up for yourselves. Now, remember, there's all kinds of things that go along with that. So we have to learn, yes, you speak up for yourself, but how do you speak up for yourself, right?
Yeah.
You have to learn how to hone that so that we can do that in a way where it wins people over, or, you know, it comes about in a way that services ourselves and everyone else as well, right?
And that was a great article. That was one of the most popular articles we've ever had in the magazine, Janyse. So thank you for that. And for those listening, you can find it if you go to at45.com and you just put in the search bar thankful, because it was about being thankful for negative people in your life.
Yeah. Well, there's so many good things happening in the world, and I wish one of your listeners would start up a newscast that is all on positive things happening in the world.
Yes,
I've
wouldn't that
talked
be
about
great?
that for years. I need 2 more lives to do all the things that I want to do.
I know the feeling, Janice.
Yeah.
Now, as for closing up, I wonder if you could clarify the difference between a psychotherapist, a psychiatrist, and a psychologist, because I myself am not clear.
Well, a psychiatrist is a medical doctor who's had, I think, another year, I'm not quite sure what it is, in pharmacology. So that's why if somebody needs medication, they can go to their doctor, but if they need maybe more accurate analysis of what kind of medication, they would go to a psychiatrist. Now, not all psychiatrists do therapy, right? Some do, some don't. And then a psychologist, they came about, they started their own school of psychology. And they, of course, do therapy, but originally they did research in therapy. So they don't give medication. And then the master's program came out. So the psychologist would have a PhD, so they can call themselves a doctor, right? But it's a doctor of philosophy is what it is. And the
Hmm.
psychology that's come about is the PsyD degree, which is, well, I'm sure it's at least 10 years old, but there's not a, it's still new in the field. And then
Wow.
there's masters in counseling psychology. So that would be a clinical psychologist or clinical counselor or clinical registered psychotherapist as well, right? I love the words psychotherapist because I have been one for years. So I am a clinical counselor. But anybody at this moment, anybody in BC can call themselves a counselor. So people
Interesting.
do need to go to a registered clinical counselor, a certified counselor, right? Whether it's across Canada or whether it's just in your province.
Right. Or internationally too, because we have people who are listening from different
Sure.
parts in
Oh,
the world.
yes, of
So they,
course.
well, thank you very much. I really appreciate. I've learned so much too. It's amazing how what we think and how we feel contributes to our well-being, both mentally and
Mm-hmm.
physically. I'm learning that all the time, how
Mm-hmm.
what you're thinking makes a difference to your body.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So remember, how you feel is up to you. I always say, how I feel is up to me.
That's a perfect way to end. Thank you so much, Janice, for visiting with us, and I look forward to many more conversations with you.
Oh, great. Thank you, Sherry, for having me on your show. I loved it.